Hi there, guys. My name is Ross Walker. I'm a senior sales engineer here at Mixpanel. So here today with Carina, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about around kind of how to build a data stack and how that really leads into kind of insights-led growth. Carina is a business analyst at Hubert, Burda Media, but I think as a way of introduction, I can give you guys just a little bit of an insight into me, and then I can pass over to Carina, who can give you a little bit of an introduction to the role that she plays. And then we can kind of get into a few of the questions that we've got here to really help you guys understand a little bit about how insights, how data stack is super important for a growth-led strategy. So first of all, my name is Ross Walker. I'm a senior sales engineer at Mixpanel. So I spend a lot of time working with organizations, working with our customers to help them understand really around how can they use analytics, how can they use product analytics to really innovate within their markets, right? How can they take the data that they have, pull insights from that, and really make the decisions that matter in engaging with their end users and growing their products?
Hi to everyone. I'm Carina Schwarzmüller. I'm from Burda News, and Burda News is a part of Hubert Burda Media, which is one of the biggest publishing companies in Germany. And at Burda News, we are based in Hamburg, so you can see the Hamburg harbor direct behind me. So this is no screensaver, but the real harbor of Hamburg. And I'm very happy to be here. Yeah, and a few words to my company. So we are a publishing company, and years ago we made transformation from classical print magazines to websites and apps, and our portfolio at Burda News includes lifestyle magazines like Fit for Fun, as well as TV guides like TV Spielfilm and the TV Spielfilm app. And I'm part of the digital product team, which is responsible for all these different brands like Fit for Fun and TV Spielfilm. And I'm worked there as a business analyst and business intelligence manager. That's so far for me, and thank you very much for having me here.
Great, no, it's great, and again, thank you for spending time. I spent some time in Hamburg, and Hamburg's lovely. I recommend it to everybody. But look, kind of digging in a little bit deeper, Carina, you mentioned that I guess you're kind of a business analyst and you kind of work as that wider product team. It'd be great to understand a little bit about what role kind of do you as a business analyst play in driving the metrics you have as an organization, and I guess also how do you interact with those other roles in the business, right? So how are you interacting with product? How are you interacting with marketing? It'd be great if you could talk a little bit about that.
First of all, I think I have to explain a little bit to my team. So we work in a team with very different, where everybody is responsible for very different brands, like fitness and lifestyle brands or TV guide, and we are a very small team. Every product manager is responsible for one brand or product, and I'm responsible for everything which is related to data. So I'm a business analyst as well as a business intelligence manager, and I support all of them with data insights, but I also try to provide them the best infrastructure so that they can have the best possible insights. And so it's all very self-service. Every business, every product manager has to make analysis by himself and has to gain complex insights within a few steps. When it comes to developing metrics, we work together with the team, so the product manager, marketing and support manager, and we work all together, and I try to give them the freedom so that they can decide what are possible key actions from their point of view, which our user needs to have in our apps. And I support them with additional insights and validate their assumption. And so that's so far for the process.
Okay, sure. Sounds great. Yeah, so it sounds like you go across kind of all of the different products and the teams you have, right? So,
that's exciting. So on the one hand, it's quite a challenge. Like we yeah, I have to keep my eyes on everything. But on the other hand, so we can learn from all the different products, and the products are in different stages of development. And what we gain on insights in one product, we try to adapt for all the other products as well.
Okay, great. Great, perfect. Thanks for that. And just quickly, one thing that I missed out on at the beginning of this kind of the call is that if any of you guys have any questions, there is a chat and there is a Q&A section. So feel free to input any questions there for myself or Carina, and we can kind of get to those as we move through this session. But great, thanks for that, Carina. I kind of got a bit more of an understanding around the organization and the role that you play there, which is great. I think what we would be quite keen to understand next, and as you probably well aware, right, growth is super important, and a big part of that is the metrics that the organization kind of relies on and measures, right? Yeah. So it would be great to understand how you as a business analyst, how kind of your organization really defines growth, and what is the role of a North Star metric in really kind of measuring that and defining growth? Yeah.
One thing that is very special about our company is like we don't sell any products in our apps or websites, and mostly we don't have any subscription model. So we are mostly financed by ad sales, and I think that makes it very special. For example, when it comes to our TV-Spielfilm apps, we also have a very high market coverage. So we have over 20 million downloads in Germany, and we don't focus anymore on generating new users, but drive the engagement for existing users. As we are ad financed and as we already have a big user base, our goal is mainly to increase page views because they can be monetized in ad sales. So our North Star metric might be always the page views. And we try to reach this goal with an higher engagement. So we try to get the user more often in the app and also deeper, making him more dependent on our apps. Yeah, and one of these key action we developed around this North Star metrics is, for example, that the user interacts with so-called TV show info pages. These are pages for one particular show where you can get more info, trailer, and have also a save later function. And we found, for example, that there's a very high correlation between opening these pages and the user's retention, and this pays out in terms of the page views in the end.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely makes sense. Yeah, and that's good because I kind of heard a lot of that before, and I think that makes absolute sense in kind of the product that you have and the areas that you work across. So, so super interesting to hear you explain that in a little bit more depth. I think what I was going to kind of ask you is, and I think it leads very well into one of the next questions that I have, and you kind of touched on it there a little bit, but it's really around like, what is an engaged user for you guys, and how do you define that engaged user? But I think that kind of like expanding that a little bit, I'd be keen to know like how you kind of define those different user segments. So maybe kind of power users, engaged, low engaged users, casual users for your product. And like, what are the key influencing factors that you really see that drive those different segments of users?
When we talk about our TV-Spielfilm apps, like there are two parts of users basically, and one are the heavy users, but the biggest group of users we have we call them prime time only users. These are users who show up like 2 minutes before prime time, like at 8:13 in the evening, and they check just one page of the TV program, look if there's anything for them, and they are gone. Like this is our biggest part of the users, and we really have to get them even more engaged. And like there's another small user base which is also particularly interesting for us, and they also don't interact much because these are users who are totally annoyed by ads in the apps. And for them, we have another business model, a small one, where we have a premium subscription where they don't see any ads at all, but have to pay a little amount. And they are also quite interesting because we don't have any data really from them, because they come, they see there are ads and they are gone. So yeah, it's really hard to target both of these user groups. Yeah.
Sure. Sounds good. Great. And I think kind of one of the things as well that we kind of spend a lot about talking, certainly at Mixpanel, right, is like, how are we kind of getting a holistic view and a complete 360 view of all of those users, right? So as you know, right, it's critically important to understand the user journey to be able to provide the better experience, right? So understanding potentially where you're seeing drop off, how are users kind of converting to some of those successful actions that you have. And a lot of the time as well is maybe how long is it taking them to kind of go through that journey, right? So I'd be keen to understand from you is like, how are you maybe kind of looking at behavioral data? How are you potentially, and I know you mentioned really around maybe you don't really focus on acquisition as much, but how are you kind of joining that maybe with any attribution metrics that you have to get a kind of complete view of that user journey lifecycle?
Yeah. Actually, attribution isn't the one thing we really focus, because like we have a very huge user base, and we have limited resources. So we try more to focus on existing users and how to engage them more. And one thing which is also quite special at our service we provide is, so we don't have one clear user funnel. Like we don't have a login, or we don't have a sales funnel. So the user can have a lot of different funnel, and there's not a correct or wrong funnel at all. And our goal, as said earlier, is to have as many page views as possible. But the challenge is that we don't have so many behavioral data from the user. As mentioned before, we have these casual users. They just quickly come, check the TV program, and are gone. And we don't have any real information from them. So we try, for example, with engagement campaigns, for example, with push campaigns, to trigger them to give us additional information. For example, we have push campaigns where we present them different TV highlights, and we show if they interact, so that we have any data from them at all. And this is one thing we really struggle, because most of our users, we don't see many behavioral data, but we try with a mixture of existing data and generating new information, for example, via marketing, to gain this holistic view on the users.
Okay, perfect. That's great. And I think that kind of like, and thank you for that, right? Moving on a little bit, I think now what I'd be kind of keen to understand is like bringing all of that together, right? Like we've been able to kind of dig in and understand really which user segments are important to you as an organization. You've kind of been able to talk a little bit about how you monitor and track those key user journeys, whether they be kind of casual journeys where people kind of come in and are very quick and you don't have a huge amount of information, or maybe those more in-depth journeys. But what I'd be very keen to understand from you is like, how has understanding that those journeys, those user segments, allowed you and your teams to ultimately like build and drive a better product, right? I guess what I'm really interested in is like, what actions have you taken based on that information that has allowed you to move the needle in those key metrics that we kind of discussed, right?
So what we did is like, we started 1 year ago with implementing all this tracking with Mixpanel, which increased the insights I told you before we had on the users. And for us, we really have very limited resources in our team. So there's just one product manager. I'm kind of a shared service between all the product managers. And so what we have to do is to prioritize very strongly. So we don't adapt everything we find out, but we really have to focus on the things with the highest potential, which generates the highest revenue. And so, for example, in the last year, we also focused on these casual users we talked earlier, and we wanted to change the product in that way that they have to interact more. So one thing we did is, like, for example, we have an TV overview where you can see the TV program, and this was an endless scrollable TV program, and we, for example, switched it so that the TV program is not endless anymore, but you have to swipe or change dates and times. And with this, we force the user to have more page views, to interact more with the app, and these increased page views triggered then more ad views, and for this increased our ad impression page view ratio, for example, by 14%. So this was one really successful adaptation we had. And yeah, our second goal is also not only to increase these page views, but to get the user deeper into the apps. So for example, we also focused on detail pages and decided how could we improve them, that the user not only comes once, see, yeah, nice, but that he's really happy with this detail pages we have. And so we have limited developer resources, but we decided to put more focus on the written content. So we try to write better content for the user so that these detail pages will be better. And there we again had to prioritize a lot, because we have over 6,000 TV shows every day. So we really had to look at the data, where we should have put the focus, which channels, which TV shows, or which categories are really interesting here for the users.
Great, yeah. Like, I think that, like, it's clear kind of like the value that, like, really digging into these datas can kind of bring, right? And like user segments and user journeys is all super important. So it's good to hear a little bit about the changes that you've made and how you've kind of been able to increase numbers by 40% and really kind of focus on some of those metrics, which is great. We do have a few kind of questions that are in the Q&A section here that I think I can kind of jump over to those. Seems like some maybe from the previous session, but I think the ones that we have here, and we can maybe like talk a little bit about a few of these live, and I think that maybe the first question would be a really kind of key one to dig into a little bit, and that kind of relates back to maybe the North Star metric conversation that we had. Really around kind of what are the key metrics and categories that you use to measure growth, right?
Yeah.
Are you looking at those, I guess, typical or usual kind of reach, activation, engagement, retention metrics? Or do you kind of have these business specific metrics, which I'm sure you have, but I think the question really is, what is it that is kind of the key metrics for you? Are they business specific, or are they those kind of like those typical metrics that you would see?
I think both. So when we try to develop new metrics, we always look at the whole funnel. So I told before, like, we are quite mature when it comes in terms of growth, but we always challenge ourselves and look if there's anything we didn't think of before in terms of reach or activation. But for the moment now, we have a very high reach. Our users, once in the app, they come back and use the app. So our focus is clearly on engagement and have metrics on the engagement side. And this is like a challenge because as I told earlier, we don't have that many data which tell us like this is a success for the users. And we, on the other hand side, have the page views, which is our key metric we want to increase. And so it's always page views for us where we look at, and we try to develop around there other metrics who makes us happy, who drive this engagement, but also try to make the user happy in the end.
Great. Like kind of just digging into that a little bit more, you mentioned kind of like there are like multiple kind of, I guess, product managers that work in their different areas across Hubert Burda Media. Do they all have the same metric that they kind of follow? Is it like kind of page views, or do they have their own specific, I guess, top level metrics, North Star metrics, and their own specific business specific metrics? How is that split up?
Yeah, in general, like I would say for the publishing brands, it's all the same. Like page view is like the key metric we all look at, because this is how we monetize. But other brands, for example, like Fit for Fun, in another stage of development, where we also have another revenue stream, and we don't only look at page views, but on clickouts, for example, to other brands where we gain affiliate revenue. So it always depends on the particular brand, but in general speaking, it's page views.
Okay, that's great. And kind of digging into a few of these other questions, I think the next question here is around like what is preferred while structuring or creating a data stack for growth, buying an existing solution or building one in-house, right? And I think like I kind of see a lot of this working at Mixpanel, right? And I think to maybe like reframe this question ever so slightly, it's kind of, you guys are heavy users of Mixpanel, right? And I'm keen to understand a little bit about kind of like how a tool such as Mixpanel and a product analytics tool has maybe changed the way you as a business analyst kind of like approach and use data, right? I think you mentioned that a lot of the teams and the product managers within your organization very much have to be self-serve. So I'd be keen to understand a little bit about like what steps you've taken kind of in providing them the tooling to ensure that they can self-serve and they can get access to data.
Yeah. I try to answer in this. So our struggle is like we have different analytics solutions for different products, and but we found out very quickly that we need a solution, like you said, which is very self-service orientated. And with another project we had within this team, we realized, for example, that Mixpanel is a very good solution for us, because it's not only an analytics feature, but you also have statistics features in it, and it's very, in a way, self-explanatory, and this helped us a lot to gain further insights. And this is one thing I focus when adapting new tools or products for analytics. I always try that we have products which are either very self-explanatory, or other products where I know that a lot of them have similar experience for that. So for example, we use also Power BI additionally, because like the look and feel is comparable to other Microsoft things we have in the company. And so we always try not to do, or we always try that everybody can work with everything we have, and that it's not too complicated because we have so limited resources.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's something that kind of resonates with me quite well, right? I think I speak to a lot of organizations that kind of speak about build yourself, kind of a DIY solution, or do we kind of go and look at these different tools in the market? And I think I'd be keen to understand a little bit around like the use cases and what people are trying to answer, right? But I think that the bigger thing is like kind of looking at these different tools within the tech stack really allows you to tailor the tech stack that you have to the type of organization that you have, right? Where you maybe have less developer resource, where you kind of need people to be a little bit more self-serve. I find that providing people these kind of best in breed tools in the areas that really matter is what's going to enable everybody within the organization to make use of the data that comes across and kind of get answers to more questions, right? And I very much think, and like this is maybe where the integrations and connecting these data stacks really resonates as well. It's that being able to take your product analytics and feed that data into a marketing tool so you can really drive engagement or outreach to those customers that behave in a certain way. And maybe being able to move some of that data that is coming into a product analytics tool over to a data warehouse so you can still continue to leverage Power BI and those BI tools in a workflow that is important to your organization.
But we also learned like it's not that it's important to have many tools, even there are a lot of buzzwords out there, even especially if you have small resources. But if you have one tool and decide something, then do it really good and work with that and dive in as deep as possible and use all what you can get out of this tool instead of like having 3, 4, 5 tools and only use them a little bit and nobody is really comfortable with using it in the deep because you have much more experience. So
absolutely. And I think that kind of ties well into one of the other questions we've got, right, about kind of how that choice of tools, how building that data stack really differs from kind of a newer business to, I guess, a more mature business, right? And I found that, like, to be honest, in my experience, I found that like it really depends on the product, the type of questions being asked. But I've found that like having a solution that can grow with you as an organization is something that is massively important for the types of questions that are going to allow you to innovate and grow your product and kind of grow, and kind of all goes around this loop, right, in growing, feeding, understanding what data worked and then feeding that back into the business. Great. We've touched on some of these questions kind of a little bit, right? But I think the one here is that around, I guess, coming back to the North Star metric a little bit, is that I guess the importance of having just a single metric, or is it, or kind of splitting that across many? And if so, are there too many, right? And I think that the approach that we kind of take at Mixpanel is kind of having this single focus metric, but then having these other metrics that are important, that ultimately feed in and drive that single metric, right? And we have this product analytics framework that really kind of drives that, and maybe it's something that you can certainly find on our website. But I think that the important thing here is like finding a metric that really drives the growth and the success of your organization, and then looking at maybe level 2, level 3 metrics that really kind of feed into that. I don't know if that's something you do as an organization, but is it just that single like page views metric that you spoke about so much that really kind of moves the needle for you, or are there more?
No, there are definitely more. I guess there's always one metric in top of all the others. Like, I guess for every company it's revenue.
Sure.
But like what drives our revenue is clearly page views, but this is influenced definitely by several other metrics like frequency, like visits, but also like engagement, like how deep user uses our app, for example. Does he also see trailer on detail pages, for example? There are several more, and I guess you should never just focus on the one metric because you can lose the others get out of sight, and this could be really hard for your business.
Okay, great. And I think we have a final question here, and maybe it's one that maybe we can kind of answer here, or maybe kind of take offline a little bit. But are you kind of doing anything at the moment, Carina, around kind of, I guess, predicting churn? And I know it's not maybe a huge metric that you have, but are you kind of doing any type of predictive analytics? I guess, in understanding how can we kind of prevent users from maybe churning from a platform, which I'm assuming is not a huge metric that you guys follow without a subscription or without a
actually we looked, we had another product. It was a TV streaming platform, and there we had a subscription model where we really looked at these churn prevention metrics, and we tried to start predicting there. So if we for example, saw like a user did stream less TV shows than the weeks ago, like this was one factor who could predict that he is more likely to churn, but also the marketing channel where he came from was a prediction factor in terms of, does he just wanted to look what product we have and just wanted to test it, or is he like really looking for a TV streaming service? So we had several influence factors where we could predict churn with.
Perfect. That's great. Cool. So look, I think that's all the questions we've kind of handled in the Q&A section that we've got, Carina. So thank you for that, and thank you for answering the questions that I had. That's been super insightful. I think kind of as we kind of look at wrapping up this session, I think what I really want to do is kind of give you a chance to leave the audience with some parting words. I guess, what's the one key takeaway you want your peers, right, to remember after this session?
One key takeaway I have for the audience is we talked a lot about these North Star metrics, and for us it's page views, but as I said, it's always important that you should not look on one metric, and there might be soft factors which also can influence your business success. So for example, if we try to force the user into more and more page views, the user could be annoyed by this, by having a lot of interaction, and it can make him unhappy. So just also take into account that there are soft KPIs like ratings on your app store, or what the support tells you about tickets and the general happiness of the customers. So it's not only the North Star metrics what should be increased, but also look at feedback of your customers.
Great. Perfect. Well, Carina, look, thank you very much for spending the time today, and thank you very much for attending the session. I also want to say thank you to the audience. So thank you, and we hope that you've kind of been able to take some actionable insights and key takeaways on building a data stack and driving growth from today's session. So again, thank you for your time, and Carina, thank you very much.